These videos are not for children. If you are a children, then piss off.
Hey there, I'm Infuso, and I'm here once again to subject myself to television torture for all you wonderful people who love seeing me in pain. I've talked in the past about that 70s show. Hell, I even talked about that 80s show. So I guess the next logical step, of course, would be to talk about that 90s show. But upon further review, no such show exists. Though I can only imagine it consists of a lot of flannel and people sitting backwards on chairs that seemed to be big at the time. However, I'm sure a lot of you American viewers, like myself, are unaware that Britain got their own unique remake of that 70s show. A show that was called Days Like These. But hey, if you didn't know, don't feel bad, because I'm sure a good amount of Brits had no idea this show existed as well. And in a second, you're not only gonna know why, but you're gonna wish that you still didn't. Ignorance is bliss. You're gonna really regret your life choices like I do every time I have to make one of these goddamn videos. So I sat here watching this show, and let me tell you straight up, it is 100% a carbon copy of the American series. Now I know what you're thinking. Duh, of course it is, V. It's an adaptation, of course it's like the original. What are you, stupid? Well, yes, clearly, but allow me to explain. They use the same exact scripts as that 70s show. The exact same scripts. The only things that are really changed are the show's references. So instead of insert American 70s pop culture reference here, it's now insert British 70s pop culture reference here. Don't believe me? Let's take a look. Compare and contrast, you let me know.
The party has reached critical mass. There will be no more beer opportunities.
If my dad catches me copping beers, he'll kill me.
I'm willing to take that risk.
The party has reached its critical mass. There will be no more beer theft opportunities.
Yes, but if my dad catches me nicking booze, he will kill me.
Eric, I'm willing to take that risk.
What the hell happened to Bob's hair?
Beats me.
His head looks like a poodle's ass.
What the hell's happened to Bob's hair?
Don't ask me.
His head looks like a poodle's ass.
My dad is thinking of giving me the Vista Cruiser. You're getting a car?
Ooh, have I told you how incredibly attractive you are, Eric?
Good news, my dad's made me think of giving me the Zephyr. What, you get in the car?
Ooh, have I ever told you how incredibly attractive you are, Eric?
It's the same exact thing. Now with that knowledge, one may think, well, that 70s show was successful. I mean, it lasted a whole 8 seasons. One of which is really the unloved, illegitimate love child of the show, but let's not really get into that. Goddamn Randy Pearson, son of a show that was successful enough to run for 8 seasons. So how did it translate over in the UK? The answer? It didn't. The series lasted a whole 13 episodes before it was ultimately cancelled. Which honestly is probably for the best. Now what makes these two shows so different? They use the same characters, albeit differently named. They had the same exact plots, the same exact dialogue. How could this possibly fail? Well, it's simple. There's a big difference between American comedy and British comedy. Now, granted, of course, there are exceptions to this. I'm just generalizing here, so nobody get pissed off in the like that's gonna work. You're gonna get pissed off anyway. Who cares? For the most part, British comedy is straight-laced. Even when it's over the top, it's still grounded enough to seem realistic. What's funny is what's real. What you see may be stupid, but it's everyday real-life stupidity. It's stupid that we actually encounter. But American comedy is about being completely outlandish. It's always about being the most outrageous and ridiculous you could possibly imagine. The things that happen in American comedies are far less likely to happen in real life. The best example of this would be the UK Office and the US Office. And I know I've been talking about those shows a lot on this channel, but I can assure you it's not intentional this time. Both shows have the same premise, but they're entirely different shows. The UK Office is mundane, and the laughs come from just how real the show can be. You can relate to what you're watching. We've all had a sleazy boss. We all had that coworker who took himself far too seriously. And we've all worked with the slacker who doesn't want to do any real work. Well, I mean, if you're my former coworkers, you've worked with that guy because I am that guy. That's why I do YouTube now. But the American Office, on the other hand, well, I can't exactly say that I've known too many people who climbed the roof to get away from their boss. And I can't recall how many times I've worked alongside a beet farmer who knew very little about social cues. British comedy reflects real life, whereas American comedy kinda helps you try to escape it. This isn't to say that one is better than the other, because I actually happen to be fond of both. However, in my opinion, it's that cultural comedic divide that made Days Like These tank. The characters of That 70s Show are very personality driven. They're all over the top. They're somewhat outrageous. Eric, while sound-minded and stable, has been known to overreact and flip out on occasion. Kelso is as loud as he is obnoxious, and as obnoxious as he is dumb, and as dumb as he is pretty. My point is, he's a very animated person. Jackie can be equally obnoxious, and sometimes loud as well. Kitty's constantly lashing out, and her voice alone makes her feel like a cartoon character. But being that this is a UK adaptation of this show, their personalities are drastically tuned down. But on the other hand, the characters on That 70s Show...
These go to 11. 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11, and most of 11.
They're delivering the same lines, but they're not delivering them with the same flair. And because of that, their dialogue doesn't have the same effect. And we don't get a better understanding of who their characters are. To me, the show just seems like actors reading lines. Like, the whole thing feels like it was just a rehearsal that ended up getting filmed. And then by time they actually had to do the shows, the cameraman didn't know what he was doing, so he thought he was pressing record, but he was actually turning it off. It's very subdued. And even by the end of this season, I really don't get a good feel for what these characters are supposed to be. For the most part, it's blank slate, blank slate, blank slate, dumb blank slate, blank slate, blank slate, blank slate. It's just, it's not great. In my opinion, Days Like These wasn't really able to flesh out their characters' identities. And that's why it didn't find the success the original did. Because the show is a very character-driven show. I mean, think about it, the premise is really just... kid grows up in the 70s. It's really simplistic, but it's the characters' personalities and their interactions with each other that really drives the show. And that's why this remake didn't find the success that its source material did. But I would say even more than that, probably the biggest contributing failure to this show is that as opposed to actually selling the rights and getting some British company to put the show together, the Carsey Werner company, which by the way up until now I've always thought was the Casey Werner company, had serious Mandela effect there. As opposed to selling the rights, they instead decided to adapt their creation themselves. Which explains why the show is basically just a copy and paste of its predecessor. It also explains why it didn't become a hit in the UK. The company was clearly out of their element with this one. You can imagine that a bunch of people born and raised in the United States may not be the best people to write up a show about a teenager's life in the United Kingdom in the 1970s. And if history has proven anything at all, it's that 9 times out of 10, if the US adapts a UK show, it will fail. And if the UK adapts a US show, it will fail. So this incarnation of the show was pretty much born and then immediately started digging its own grave. It was an abortion of a series. You see, the American office was successful because they actually adapted for American audiences. They took the basis of the UK show, and they built up upon it in a way that worked for American viewers. Days Like These did no such thing. They took all the old scripts line for line and changed some slang here and there to better fit its new location. So that's not really an adaptation, that's a really tired reimagining. You know, if your idea for a reimagining consists of, hey, what if they talked with accents and also it sucked now? Well, what if it sucked now? Now, I previously said that the show only had 13 episodes, and that's true. 13 episodes were created, but only 10 of them ever saw air. The other 3 are just lost, they're gone. This show was dead on arrival. And you know what? They have nobody to blame but the show creators themselves. They set themselves up for this failure. It's also interesting that this show was created during the 2nd season of That 70s Show. So meaning they were just finding success when they decided to dip their toe in the UK pool. I mean, hey, it's been successful for 1 whole year here. Might as well start it over there. It's probably going to be just as good.
Bitch, that's a mistake.
And also, I don't know if this is just the way that 90s British television shows were shot at the time, but it definitely looks like it was working with 1/3 of what the budget for That 70s Show was working with. I don't know. I know there are some British degenerates out there, so if you can let me know in the comments section if this is just how TV looked at that time, or if this just looks unnaturally awful, please let me know. I'm really curious about that. Oh, and also, that title sequence, oh my god, it's horrendous. First time I watched this, I just thought, is this a joke? And if so, what's the punchline? Who is it funny to? What am I doing with my life? I could have been a doctor or some shit. Now I just sit around talking about British That 70s Show for a living. Where did it go wrong? Was it ever right? Anyway, I'm V Infuso, and this wasn't That 70s Show. I don't know what this is. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I want to know. I just want to move on from it. Just leave it in the past. Just move on.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alex Jones, and we are breaking the conditioning. Now look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded, which is why I liked and subscribed to the Social Injustice Warriors channel. I even clicked that little bell to stay notified. You have to look into it, people. But then I began to uncover what I believe to be a secret, nefarious plot orchestrated by Zionist reptilians. Now give me a second. Digging deep, I discovered that he wants you to quote-unquote follow him on Twitter. Now think about that for a minute. What kind of person, what sort of individual wants you to follow them? You know who else wanted people to follow them? The world's biggest Beach Boy fan, Charles Manson. Those who want to show their support donate to the guy's Patreon for exclusive content. Now why is it so exclusive? What's this guy hiding from the public? What do those Patreons see that the people of YouTube don't? Then I noticed he also has a PayPal, and just for the low price of $22 plus shipping, you can get yourself a SIJW t-shirt, Social Injustice Warrior. So let's put this all together. He wants people to follow him, he calls you VTards, he wants you all to donate your money to him, and he wants all of you to wear the same clothing. So that just leads to ask, what kind of a hive-like cult is this man operating? V Infuso, the Social Injustice Warrior.